The United States calling foul on countries that are retaliating against its steel and aluminum tariffs. The U.S. is filing complaints against Canada, the European Union, China, Mexico, and Turkey with the World Trade Organization. The U.S. trade chief called the American tariffs, quote, wholly legitimate and fully justified, and said that instead of working with us to address a common problem, some of our trading partners, including Canada, have elected to respond with retaliatory tariffs designed to punish American workers, farmers, and companies. With more on this and other political stories making headlines this week, we are joined again by the Globe and Mail's Laura Stone. Good to have you back with us, Laura.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
First question, let's talk about trade. Why does the U.S. feel their tariffs were justified, but that our retaliatory tariffs are not?
Well, this is just the latest shot fired in this global trade war that Donald Trump is waging in Canada and around the world. As you mentioned, Anne-Marie, Canada and the EU, China, Mexico, and Turkey are now the subject of these complaints at the World Trade Organization. Basically, the U.S. message here is we're allowed to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum around the world, but these other countries aren't allowed to retaliate. And the logic for this is a bit fuzzy. The United States has said they're imposing these measures because of national security, which Canada has basically said is absurd because Canada is not a national security threat to the United States. But Donald Trump is sending a message here that he's not going to back down on this trade war. There's also, of course, this looming threat of more tariffs that are going to be imposed on the auto sector. So that is the point of this messaging from the United States. They aren't backing down. They think that they can dominate this discussion of trade tariffs and that no other countries are allowed to retaliate.
Let's stick closer to home right now. Sources saying the Prime Minister may plan to reshuffle his cabinet this week. Do we know who could be coming in, who could be going out, or what portfolios might be combined?
Well, this is a very exciting time for political journalists in Ottawa, Anne-Marie. We need some midsummer excitement. And yes, there are lots of indications that Prime Minister Trudeau is going to shuffle his cabinet tomorrow, and this is happening just a little more than a year out from the next federal election. So this would be the team that Trudeau wants to present in the 2019 federal election. And what sources have told CTV, for instance, is that the key players such as Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister Bill Morneau, Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale are going to stay put in their portfolios. But we are hearing there could be some movement on the heritage file with Melanie Joly, as well as fisheries with Dominic LeBlanc. And we could see some more split portfolios. Right now, House Leader Bardish Chagger has two roles. She's the House Leader and the Small Business Minister, so we could see her lose the small business portfolio, and we are expected to see this cabinet grow. So this is happening, as I said, for a couple of reasons, because the country is heading into an election in a little more than a year, and there's also the Doug Ford factor. The federal government might want to switch some people up as they face some challenges with the new Ontario government.
There have been some conversations around immigration minister because that portfolio is under such a spotlight right now. Would we see any changes, or are you hearing anything that it'll just remain the same?
It is definitely possible. I mean, no one knows for sure until we show up at Rideau Hall, potentially tomorrow, to hear this cabinet shuffle, but that could be one of them. Ahmed Hussein, the immigration minister, has butted heads with Lisa MacLeod, the Ontario minister. This is, of course, a huge brewing issue in Ottawa with emergency meetings on the asylum issue going to be held late throughout the summer, a couple of meetings throughout the summer. So we could see some movement on that file, but of course, the federal government, Prime Minister Trudeau, could be happy with the job that the immigration minister is doing, or he could want to find someone who could play a little nicer with the Ontario government. We'll see tomorrow or whenever this cabinet shuffle actually happens.
All right, speaking of tomorrow and the Ontario government, you have the Premier's meeting in New Brunswick. Those meetings start tomorrow, go until Friday. Premier Ford is newly elected. This will be his first time round at these meetings. Lots of talk about carbon tax, and you've got sort of the Conservative leaders who are gathering together at this meeting. We're showing our viewers a map right now of sort of where the Conservative premiers are gathered, and we know what their take is, in particular Saskatchewan and Ontario, saying we'll fight this in court if we have to. What do you expect to be the conversation there?
Well, this is going to be Doug Ford's debut. It's going to be the Doug Ford show in New Brunswick over the next couple of days. And this is where we really will get a sense of the shifting landscape in federal-provincial relations. Doug Ford and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe have banded together in their opposition of the carbon tax, and a little bit with Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister. We've also heard some grumbling from the PEI Premier on this issue as well. So this is where Doug Ford can see what kind of allies he has in the room with the premiers across the country. They'll also be discussing, of course, this asylum seeker issue, which Ontario has made a forefront issue. So this is going to be, the new reality for the Trudeau government, what it's going to be like to deal with Doug Ford and how that changes things on the federal provincial landscape.
It'll be interesting to watch. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you.